What's up, guys, and welcome to the Level Health Podcast. Today, Josh is interviewing Mike and Lisa Kromer, a strongman, strongwoman powerhouse couple that's been married for 22 years. They have both won several championships in strongman, and Lisa just finished up taking first place in the wellness category at the Emerald Cup. They have both been competing in strongman and powerlifting events since the 90s, and it seems that they've consistently been getting stronger since then. In today's episode, they share some wisdom and talk about how they've achieved such longevity in strength sports. They also talk about their favorite lifts, major turning points in their career, and our personal favorite topic, how the fitness industry can improve. We want to give a huge thanks to Mike and Lisa for coming on our show and to all of our listeners for tuning in. If you haven't already, go set up your membership on levelhealth.net. We have memberships both for health and fitness professionals as well as clients and patients. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Level Health Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Mike and Lisa Kromer. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Welcome. Absolutely glad to be here.
So you guys are two of the strongest people that I personally know. I've seen both of y'all repping, 10 repping my above my one rep max, both of y'all. Actually, I read, Lisa, this is from 2016, I believe, but what was the event? It was 145 overhead press for reps.
2016, I'd probably be a log clean.
A log press. Yeah. So I am a huge student. I love the overhead press. So that's thoroughly impressive to me. And then I'm not even going to talk about Mike because that's just in another stratosphere from me. But so basically when I was thinking of like, who could I call in a favor and ask to come on the podcast, I thought immediately of you guys, because obviously you are doing something different than other people are. And I wanted to kind of tease that out and see what it was. So just starting out, could you each give us just a little bit of a background on you and how you got to the point that you're at now?
Well, for me, it kind of started with coming back to the Tri-Cities after college and meeting him at the gym. And we met and hit it off pretty quick. And he introduced me to the world of powerlifting. And we did get married right around 1999, a year after he got back. He was
a good year.
Yeah, I was her trainer.
He was my trainer. So.
Yeah, I read that. I thought a little bit of a conflict of interest, but I mean, obviously it worked out. So I
started working there, but even more conflict. But no, it's all good. So he had just started competing in strongman around that time, so I was able to see him do that. And then probably 1999 was the first strongman contest that I did, which is kind of harder to find a contest that had weights that women could do. But I started competing in strongman in 1999. So I kind of combined powerlifting and strongman during those years and got introduced to the world that way through him. So we have a couple children. So when I had kids, it took a little bit of time to recover and come back to it, especially the first time. But I would say I really got inspired to compete and be competitive and do well when I came back to the sport in 2010. So even though I did have maybe a dozen years experience prior to that, I became more competitive around 2010, getting back into things.
That's fascinating. Had you learned quite a bit at that point? Obviously you have a great teacher if you listen to him. But what did you learn at that point? What was it that kind of made that switch for you to just really step it up a notch?
To be honest, probably mental health and wanting to feel good on a regular basis and healthy, and competing keeps me motivated to set goals and keep striving towards those. So that was probably the turning point that, post-pregnancy, weight gain from having a kid and wanting to get strong and healthy again, threw myself into it much more wholeheartedly than I had prior to that.
So the health aspect was a huge part of it for you. Would you still be doing strongman as a means to achieve that goal, that health goal? Are you going to continue doing it even when competitions aren't necessarily, a top priority for you, if that ever occurs?
Oh yeah, it's kind of a identity crisis right now because I'm wanting to go more towards being on stage and doing wellness, for example, like at the Emerald Cup, had some success there and wanting to pursue that, and just knowing that for doing strongman for over 20 years, it's pretty hard on the body. And I've had a few key surgeries to repair things that got injured along the way. And, you know, sometimes I think, well, should I just make this transition? And I really struggle with it. I have a really hard time knowing what to focus on. You know, powerlifting is kind of on the wayside. Strongman, that's, my heart loves it. I love the endorphin rush. Health-wise, probably getting on stage is easier on my body. And then there's the grip strength sports, which, you know, is a fun sideline as well that I enjoy doing. So.
I absolutely want to take that sideline. Actually, that was one of the notes that I put, because going to Russia to do a grip strength competition, like stepping into the belly of the beast, I would imagine. I mean, it's probably their sport. One more thing on that though. You said that, how was that transition from, obviously bodybuilding is, like you said, a little bit easier on the body, not to say that you don't have to work hard. But I mean, you have to be kind of a little bit of a special kind of masochist to do strength sports, because it's almost you have so much wiggle room for bodybuilding. Like you can be quite a bit off of optimal and still be fine. And, you know, and then you still have the subjective nature of the entire sport. So obviously if you're doing it and you have, you know, a little bit more intrinsic value like you do to it. I personally think that bodybuilding is fantastic for health and longevity, because obviously the older you get, the harder it is to build muscle, and that you need that. It's a reserve. So I'm doing kind of a mix between, so I could see why you kind of getting torn in two different directions. But the grip strength competition, so explain just generally how that kind of competition is. I don't think anybody, I mean, you were the first one that I'd ever heard of it. I mean, I've seen like the rock lifting and stuff like that. I'm not sure what they'd be called. But I mean, all the other countries have a culture around it.
So Arm Lifting USA is the United States federation that kind of leans more towards the strongman strength side of things. You get more strongman coming into it that way. So there's a few key lifts that we do. One of them is the Rolling Thunder. So it's a one-handed deadlift, basically. There's a double overhand axle deadlift. There's the grippers, so like the silver bullet hold for time. I think Saxon bar, it's kind of like this square, horrible bar that you pick up like a deadlift. So those are 4 key lifts. There's at least, you know, a dozen others that I could probably rattle off. Yeah, hug lift. So it's nice for, I think it's nice for a lot of different types of people to get into, because it is a strength sport, but it's not as taxing as strongman, for example, which is full body. So I think it opens things up for more people to try. It's good accessory work for strongman. And then for somebody who's been injured or doing other things, you know, it's a great all around kind of thing that people can get into. For the Russia thing that you brought up, there's leaderboards for Arm Lifting USA, and they take the top 3 in each category to be invited to do Arm Lifting Professional League Worlds, which was held in St. Petersburg, Russia, a couple of years ago, which is where I went. And yeah, the Russians take Rolling Thunder in particular very seriously. It's incredibly competitive and popular. So that was a really great opportunity to go be part of Team USA over there.
Were there any, when you were preparing for that grip strength competition and really just the training process in general, was there anything that kind of surprised you that wouldn't have been intuitive coming from the strength side of things? Because I would imagine that, I mean, obviously there's all those intrinsic muscles within the hand, but I would imagine there's a huge neurological component, because that's just having to pump out juice to your hand just nonstop. So was there anything that kind of shocked you?
Yeah, so a couple things. One of them is 2.5 pounds can make or break you with these lifts. You know, even a 1/4 pound. It's the difference between, yeah, I got it easy and it went okay, or not okay. This is Samuel. This is the first time hearing.
That's good, Samuel.
And then the other thing is, in warm-ups, you don't want to overextend yourself or fatigue yourself too much in warm-ups. So it's kind of a fine line of warming up enough, but not completely blasting your grip so that by the time you get up there, you can't do the lift. So your grip can go fast.
That's what I was going to guess. I mean, the grip strength in general it's weird, because it's almost like a vital sign. They can test that. So I wonder if the having a strong grip up through, you know, your later years correlating to health, if you could kind of like hotwire that backwards by making sure that you maintain your grip strength, and maybe that has some crossover. But that's very, very interesting. Were you nervous going over to Russia to do any kind of strength sport?
Yeah, I actually traveled by myself, and I maybe knew a half dozen to a dozen Russian words. I'm slightly hearing impaired, and so when I came into the country and went through customs, it was very intimidating booth that you're just alone with the customs agent, and they tell you to take your glasses off. So I lip read a lot. So I can't see them, can hardly hear them, don't really understand them because the English isn't so great that they're speaking. I don't speak Russian really. That was pretty scary. And then finding out that my cell phone service didn't work in Russia, so I couldn't use my translator app, and I couldn't look up my email that confirmed my private driver. So my driver wasn't there with the sign that said Lisa when I arrived at the airport. He didn't show up for like half an hour after I arrived. So I was kind of starting to panic, but try not to panic that I'm stuck in a foreign country. I can't communicate. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired. I've been traveling for almost 24 hours. What am I going to do? Anyway, so
all of those feeding into, I'm sure all of those would feed into reduced grip strength the next day too. You're just stressing yourself out, not getting sleep. So hopefully you got there a few days early.
No. And they're probably, you know, just an extended week. And I started traveling on a Wednesday and came back on a Sunday. And I probably slept 4 hours during that frame of time. So I was exhausted. That translates into not performing as well, but I did all right, had PRs, had a great time, and I would love to go back. So
that's just an awesome way to look at it. Being able to compete and not necessarily be fully attached to the outcome, although I'm sure you would have liked to go taking a home first place. But that's very interesting. I'm sure that Mike, you have just as many interesting strongman competitive stories. So if you wanted to start.
Yeah. I got into powerlifting, and I kind of got bored with it. It's very static, and it wasn't as athletic. Not saying to say that powerlifters, but I needed to move. So I did my first strongman contest in Bend, Oregon. And I was absolutely hooked at that point. And then I met a gentleman named Ode Haugen, who just happens to be called the Vice Grip Viking. He is the guy that leads the charge for Armlifting US, helps lead the charge for Armlifting USA, and just helps really promote the sport. He's in his 70s now, and still can double overhand axle grip over 400 pounds. I think, and he recently had his hip replaced. So yeah.
You just come back stronger.
Yeah. So when I met Ode in Bend, he invited us all to go to Hawaii to do, which at the time I didn't realize was the USA Championships for Strongman. So our honeymoon was in Hawaii. And I got to, over the course of about 4 years, I went 3 times to Hawaii to compete in this contest. And I have a picture floating around with me standing with, I think there's 5 other guys in the picture that went on to win. And we are going to, looks like we're going to be putting on our next contest sometime in September over in Pasco. So we're going to be posting stuff about that. But back to my long history in this sport. So after we moved back to the Tri-Cities in 2008, right? 2008, I started getting really back into strongman, and for a while there, one of the things about being competitive is you're super hard on yourself a lot of times, right? You have to find where you need to be. And I was so focused on working on getting a pro card, got to get my pro card. I basically made myself miserable. And I took a bit of advice from my awesome significant other. And I realized I just needed to go in and have fun. The whole point of doing this is to have fun. If you're not having fun, why are you doing it? It's not about the trophies, which the trophies are nice, It's about competing against myself, not about competing against anybody else. I go in, I try and do better than I did the previous time, and I have fun. And the other thing is being an ambassador for the sport, right? So the more I have fun, the more I can translate that fun to other people and take the time out to help coach them and to give them kudos and to, you know, inspire them as much as I can, especially when you're competing against somebody. You say, you know, you go and finish the event and the other guy is still struggling. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to cheer them on while they're doing it. So a couple other things I did along the way is I've generally always coached myself. So I reached out to a guy named John Anderson, and he has what's called the deep water method. I don't know if are you familiar with that at all?
No, I'd love to hear about it.
So John's a longtime strongman. He's somebody I started competing with a long time ago. He went on to be, you know, he was a pro strongman. And then he did some wrestling, mostly over in Japan. And he developed this deep water method along with a guy named Jesse Morunde, who's kind of another legend in the sport who passed away way too early. And basically the whole thing about the deep water method is you're pushing yourself to the point where you think you're going to fail, but then you get into that zone where you find those extra reps and that extra intensity to continue going when you don't think you can. And that completely changed the way I train. And I don't know if you've ever been around when I was doing at the gym, when I would do like 10 sets of 10 on squats and then follow that with 5 sets of 10 on deadlifts. That's part of that deep water training. Or doing 100 reps in as few sets as possible.
I just tried not to watch you when you would lift because it would make me feel bad. That's very interesting. Just real quick, that finding that zone and going to that next little ledge, I think that that's getting borne out in the literature too for like hypertrophy, the quote unquote effective reps, getting into the zone where it's actually stimulating adaptation. So that's very interesting. It correlates very, very well with what's happening in the sports science research as well.
Yeah, and then the other thing that correlates with that too is when you're doing those. Say you're doing those 100 reps with the fewest sets, you know, hitting that. We talked that those studies that have come out that said, you know, doing 50% to failure is giving you the same, can get you close to the same hypertrophy as doing like those 8 to 12 reps, right? So you're doing that, which was it was a mind changer and a game changer, and it kind of changed my attitude towards how I train myself and how I train other people. So after that happened. Lo and behold, things started happening for me that hadn't happened before. I went and after tearing a bicep, 6 or 7 months after tearing my bicep, right? Yeah. I went
in deadlifts
on my first national championship. Then I tore my other bicep.
So this is around when we had our latest child too. So just want to throw that out there.
I'm sure that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Premature.
Yeah. So
good times.
So yeah, I went through and I tore my second bicep, and you know, I had been having a run and things were going well, and I was like, geez, I don't know if I can do this anymore. My wife basically said, shut the F up, get it fixed, and keep going, which I did. And then 2016, I went to Indiana and did a contest, and the whole goal of that contest was to get me to my first Masters World's Championship in the UK. In Doncaster, and I was able to do that, and I got to travel to the UK, compete there, which is a whole nother ball game when you talk about strongman. When you go to UK and you do a strongman contest, you know, when you're in the US, you get a couple dozen people. You're lucky if you get 50, maybe 100. I was competing in this place where there was 1,000 people watching us compete, and they were an enthusiastic 1,000 people, and they were screaming and yelling, and it was a complete eye-opener and game changer for me. And then since then, I went to the official strongman games 4 times. I've had 3 top 10 finishes there. I've been finishing either second or third in the USS Masters Pro Nationals, which is, I'm getting ready for my next Masters Pro Nationals coming up June 5th. So yeah, it really is for me about having fun And as long as I can keep having fun, I'm going to still do it. And, you know, I've got a great group of guys that come over here and train now, and I'm trying to impart that on them. And I've one guy in particular I am so excited for him. He's going to do his first Masters national champion, or his first national championship. And this is only going to be his 4th contest. And I think he's going to open some eyes, and people are going to be like, oh, who's this guy? So
he's going to put up some good numbers. That's very interesting that you mentioned having fun above all else, because I think some people would look at you from the outside, you know, outside of maybe you're smiling when you're lifting, and look at that as almost like a masochistic thing. And I think that a lot of people in the fitness space, strength space, they really do have that martyr mentality where they have to definitely to a fault, definitely to where they're doing things that are counterproductive to their actual progress, because they've identified as somebody that wakes up, you know, at 4 a.m. to hit AM fasted cardio. But it's like, you don't actually have to do that. So I think if you're really looking at through the lens of I'm having fun, am I having fun with it? That shapes your values in a way, and shapes your approach in a way that I think is a lot more productive. And obviously, since y'all have had the longevity in the sport that you have, that's probably some of it. But then the next thing I wanted to ask, you touched on a little bit, but how is the strongman space? I want to hear it from on the female's perspective as well, Lisa. How has the strongman space changed over the last couple of decades? I imagine it's pretty significant.
Yeah, huge. There were very few women competing when I started in 1999. One of the biggest contests of the time in those early years was the Beauty and the Beast, which was offered to the women once in 2000. Yeah, 2000. So funny story about that Beauty and the Beast. It was going to be a bikini show and a strongman show. So I started to do my first bikini show, and then they changed it about a month out. I'm like, well, I'm game. I've done strongman before, so I got to do the strongman, strong woman at the Beauty and the Beast. So that was a very significant, very cool show, because there's about 10 of us that got to compete in the same venue as, you know, these world's strongest men competitors, you know, the same contest that Mike was doing with these guys. And that was really cool. In those early years, it was hard to find equipment that was scaled appropriately for size and weight. And then the years that I kind of came, you know, backed away from competing when I had my first child, that's when, you know, there was more of the nationals not Strongman Corporation, what did they used to call it? Anyways, the old Strongman Corporation, they started doing nationals, and I wasn't involved at that time. So when I came back in 2008, started competing again, there was maybe a little bit more women, a little bit more presence, and then you started having World's Strongest Woman on TV. I would say when CrossFit started getting big, that's when you started to see more women transitioning into strong women, and then getting the right sized equipment that was easier to get a hold of and things of that nature. So much more accepted by, you know, women getting into sports. You'd see women start putting up crazy numbers, lifting heavy, a professional status. I think that started in 2016, that there's actual pro status for women. The Arnold in 2013, I got to compete there at the first women's strong woman Arnold competition for amateurs. It's bigger. Now you see things like road record breakers at the Arnold, women putting up crazy weights, lifting crazy things, just pushing the limits more and more. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, really, you have women now who are doing weights that 15 years ago you would see at the World's Strongest Man. So
the men.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to obviously a larger pool. I mean, you're seeing this happen across athletics. It's just either we're picking the right people, or the right people are picking the right sports. And as much as I hate to give them credit, I think CrossFit changed a lot of stuff in the fitness industry, a lot of stuff, not necessarily all for the better. But I mean, the fitness industry hasn't been doing a good job on its own anyway. So when CrossFit kind of came in and nudged it towards more Olympic lifting, more compound lifts and things like that, I think a lot of people were very welcome with it. You know, they were very excited about it. So that makes sense that's when it started to kind of transition away from just completely aesthetically focused. Mike, what have you seen?
Sorry, what was that?
What have you seen?
Oh, geez. Well, they've definitely standardized the stuff across the board much better now. The equipment is a little bit more in line. Even a lot of the designs now, you can buy basically the same thing from multiple vendors, and when you get it, the handle grip is the same, the weight's almost the same. Yeah, a lot of standardization rules that go across the board for a lot of events. And then more opportunities now for everybody, because you have 2 amateur federations realistically in USS and Strongman Corp. Strongman Corp does offer a pro status, which doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot necessarily. And then you've got Official Strongman Games, which provides a platform for a world championship, so you can get athletes from around the world, and you're getting 400 or 500 athletes together to compete at a three-day show, and you can get a world championship from a 105-kilo guy or a 64-kilo woman or 65-kilo woman, something like that. So there's a lot more avenues and a lot more. I mean, every state has a strongman. Every state has a strongman contest now, and you have multiple contests usually in any given state. So there's a lot more opportunities.
Does it feel like less of a community now? I imagine back in the day, back a little while ago, it was a little bit more.
No, you can touch whatever contest you go to. The one thing about strongman is it's really hard to find somebody at a strongman contest who is an asshole. and so when you go to, say, bodybuilding or powerlifting, you'll run into those guys. When you go to a strongman contest, it is even though these people might not have met each other before, almost every single person there is willing to help anybody else, even people they're competing against. So the camaraderie is unique in that aspect, that even though you're competing against somebody else, you're almost always there to help them too, cheer them on.
With social media, even people who are on a completely different continent, we stay pretty interconnected to a certain degree. You meet people from around the world, and they get in your address book, so to speak. You kind of keep an eye on each other, stay in contact. You look forward to seeing each other at these big shows, maybe once a year. And there's people in Australia and Europe, and just it makes it's still a community, even if you're spread out geographically.
Yep.
I think that objectivity of the sport kind of lends to that with bodybuilding in particular. I noticed that very, very quickly. I mean, I jumped out of the physique sport really quickly because it just wasn't for me. But what I did see was a lot of that hostility, because it's entirely subjective. And so everybody's out trying to out angle each other and out posture each other. And it just gets a little bit ridiculous. So you guys have both been in this game for a long time. What stands out to you as a reason for your longevity in the sport? I think a lot of times people tend to shorten their own runway for progress by going too hard, maybe making just one too many mistakes to where they have a debilitating injury. I know y'all both have multiple injuries, but I mean, it's kind of the cost of admission for a strength sport. But you obviously have done it to where you can keep going over the long term. What kind of stands out to you as a reason for that?
Part of it is being willing to step back and rehab those injuries or get them fixed or repaired, taking the time needed to build yourself back up so that you can compete again. It might mean that you're kind of out of the loop for a year, or not competing for a while, or not as competitive. But
the one thing that I've learned as I've gone along, and even I talked to some of the guys that who started around the same time I do. Our knowledge of how to train, how hard to train, and when to train has changed drastically from when we first started. And then the tools we have for recovery are so much better now. Whether we're doing cryo, whether we're constantly getting every week it's a chiropractor or a massage or we're hitting cryo chamber, we're getting cupped, or we're just because, it's nice having, we're out in our shop, but it's nice being able to come out here and we can do our rehab stuff out here now. We're hitting the rollers, we're stretching, doing whatever you need to do. The older you get, the more you need to do that stuff to make yourself functional, keep yourself functional.
That daily maintenance. Yeah, that makes sense. And I would say if you don't look back and if you look back and you feel like you're doing the same thing over a long period of time, that just is kind of fundamentally opposed to what we know about biology and physiology. Like, you have to adjust, you have to adapt over time, so that, and then having the wherewithal to take a step back and actually rehab that injury must be one of the hardest things that you can do. So I did half of a powerlifting meet. It was that deadlift for doggies at Icon, and I had a minor tear in my pec, and it's because I pushed that peaking process. I just jumped into it a month ahead of time, which, I thought, I'm smart enough to reserve myself. But having that understanding that you need to take a step back, that must be huge. You've already talked about your training quite a bit, your recovery, how it's evolved over time, specifically with your nutrition. I think the nutrition space has evolved significantly, but then we look back decades ago and people tended to be doing the right thing back then, and maybe they didn't know why, and maybe, fad hadn't come about yet. And so everybody, went low carb or high carb, we're all over the place. So what nutrition wise has changed for you?
For me, I've worked with Roger Baker for many years, as far as like macros or meal plans, and consistency I think is important, but also making sure I'm still getting those things that I enjoy so that I don't go crazy not having them. So chocolate, that's my favorite food. I'm going to make sure I have chocolate, if not every day, pretty dang close to it.
I'm right there with you. I go through 2 bars of chocolate in less than a week if I have it in the freezer. So I put it in the freezer too, because I think, oh, it'll slow me down a little bit. But no, it's gone in a week.
It just makes you salivate more the more it's in your mouth because it's still frozen. You can't do it, right? The funny thing about her chocolate, I mean, seriously, it can make her break her day. And doing her first physique show, she was really eating chocolate, I think, up to the contest every single day.
It might not be a lot, but just learning moderation, trying to balance my nutrition, making sure I'm getting the micronutrients that I need, and hitting those key things like getting enough protein, or if it's fat or carbs, just being very conscious of what I'm eating. I've learned a lot along the way, tracking that and just being aware.
What about you, Mike? Pretty much stayed the same?
After I changed somewhat after we did the whole stand efforting thing, and I changed how I eat a little bit, and I noticed my gut activity has changed too because of that. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty consistent with how I eat now, trying to make sure that I'm getting enough. You just got to make sure you do things like get enough fiber, get your veggies in. That's huge. Getting enough protein in, which is always kind of a catchy subject, because, well, how much protein do you actually need a day? Are you doing a gram per pound body weight? Are you doing a gram per pound lean mass? It just depends. And I honestly think it all falls into efficacy. Where is your body happy, and where does it perform the best? And sometimes that takes a little bit of figuring out. Sometimes you're lucky and you step into somebody who's really knowledgeable. I have a friend who works with, I don't know, what's his name? He's done diets for Brian Shaw, Martine Felices, and I had a friend who worked for him, so I was able to work with him. So I picked his brain a little bit, got some stuff out of that. The whole thing boils down to consistency, because consistency leads to a consistent energy level, and it means you can perform when it comes time to perform, whether you're training or going into a contest. And that's especially essential when you have to travel to compete. That's one of the hardest times to be consistent, because you get delayed on the plane, and now with COVID, oh no, we can't feed you on the plane, or you could have some snacks. So you got to make sure you're bringing what you need on the plane. to make sure you're there, and then making sure your travel plans are adequate so that I'm always there a day early to make sure my body has a chance to normalize. And if I need to, find a local gym or whatever and do whatever I need to do to unkink my body so it's ready.
That I was so excited. I got exposed to the vertical diet, I think in 2018. And it was just so refreshing because there are like non-negotiables as a human. We have these things that we need to feel. We need micronutrients. We need enough protein to support lean body mass. And so like, no matter what your opinion of nutrition is, you have to temper that through, run that through the filter of, I need to do these few things. And there really aren't like a ton. But so that was awesome that, so you changed after you saw Stan Efferding in 2020 when he came to the gym?
Yep. And then recently I've become addicted to dried mangoes of all things.
Phenomenal. They are phenomenal.
I eat a bag of dried mangoes every single day, and it's like her chocolate. It makes me happy. It's what I'm like. I get to eat my dried mangoes. Yay!
I think that's such an important piece because I still see like physique coaches, especially being having their athletes be extremely restrictive. And it's like, not only is that probably, again, counterproductive, but it also is very, very psychologically taxing because they're always having to make this decision that they don't necessarily want to. And then over time, that just wears down on them. And again, like you can have so much freedom. You can have the chocolate to the day of your competition. You can have the dried mangoes. One more question on the nutrition. What calorie count do y'all get up to pre-contest? Because I imagine I'd be interested to hear with Lisa, because I've trained countless women, and more often than not, they are 1,500 or below. So it's just interesting to see the wide range that can come.
So for a strongman, if I don't have to worry about hitting a specific weight class, I'll easily be eating 2,000 calories a day, easily.
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
She's always hungry, so it doesn't matter. I can
put food away. That's something that attracted him to me on our first date. It's like, I could just like eat it. But anyway, so getting ready for wellness. My next contest is looking like July in Pittsburgh for Masters Nationals. Right now, I'm about 11 weeks out, and I'm right around 1,500 calories. When I get close to getting on stage, I've been as low as just below 1,200 calories. So there's a 1,000 calorie range of what I need to do to perform well for whatever I'm doing.
So I'm assuming, how much cardio are you doing to get that level of lean?
Worst case scenario, I think that I've done like 7 days of miss training for like 40 minutes each, with maybe 5 days of 15-minute HIIT training. So that's as extreme as it has gotten. At other times I've come into it maybe just doing a walk a day around the block. So it varies, but yeah, maybe 2 days would be the worst case scenario that I've tried to, had to experience to get on stage.
Under 1,200, I think some people may be concerned with that a lot. I mean, once you get around that, they're like, you just don't want to do it. But I mean, at a certain point, your body will not lose any more body fat unless you peel those calories back or you add in more cardio. So it's like one of these things. I'd rather not add a bunch of fatigue with that cardio. I'd rather pull down the calories to, quote unquote, dangerous levels than add in cardio and add in, that opportunity cost too. You have other things that you want to do. You don't need to be spending an hour and a half on an elliptical every day just to get lean.
Yeah. And, with the training approach that we've had going into those kind of circumstances, it's for a very short period of time that I'm doing that much cardio or reducing the calories that much. That's more like a dial it in the last couple of weeks kind of thing if you need to.
I still see that being step one for people's preps. And it's really concerning because they're not monitoring their daily activity at all. So now you have a giant unknown in that side of the equation. And then you're throwing cardio at the problem like it's going to solve everything. And gosh, man, it can be really, really draining for people, obviously. What about you, Mike? Do you get up to 5, 6?
Oh, geez. I have literally not been tracking my calories since I changed my eating habits with the vertical diet. I will tell you that if I vary much, I get gut discomfort, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm probably, my guess is somewhere around 3,500 calories a day on average, up to 4,000. Just depends on, you know, if I throw in something extra snacky at night. Yeah, it's yeah, I'd say easily 3,500 to 4,000 calories. But I've also noticed that with that consistency and just keeping everything the same, I think my body composition has changed a little bit, and I've gained, not intentionally, some more lean muscle mass. So yeah.
That was my next question. Are you planning on adding any more? I know, Lisa, you're going kind of going the opposite direction. But I go and going a little bit away. And now wellness, it's a little bit different. Can you explain just real quick the parameters for that? What do they judge it on?
Sure. So, you know, just kind of the hierarchy of getting on stage for women. You've got bikini, you've got wellness, figure, physique, then bodybuilding. So I've done a couple of physique contests. I don't really have the big shoulder caps or big lat spread. But, you know, what else was I going to do? So now wellness is pretty new in the United States, and it showcases more muscularity in the lower body. So the glutes, the quads, I've got both of those. So really good for me. And I don't have, like, you know, the really prominent shoulders, or, you know, that you might see in some of those upper levels. So I girling is hard for me. So the idea of doing something, you know, getting glammed up bikini wise, it's a very huge mindset shift. Wellness, they're looking for something athletic up on the stage, but also kind of pairing it with the heels and looking glamorous. So it's been fun for me. I kind of feel like the category fits me and my body shape, and maybe not quite my personality better, but I'm having fun with it. So I'm glad they opened up a new category like that.
Yeah, I'm sure years of strength sports definitely help develop your lower body quite a bit. I'm wondering if how hard that is for people trying to catch up to that now. I think that some women just to have that shape naturally, but developing the glutes and developing the quads and hamstrings and everything, that takes some time. And so those years of strength sports, that absolutely makes sense. Next question. What is y'all's favorite lift, training lift and event lift? Because I think they might be a little bit different.
I like deadlifts and overhead pressing.
So a couple of years ago, I might answer differently, but I've been putting so much focus on my deadlift recently that deadlift is now more of one of my favorite movements. It was always an Achilles heel of mine. My body doesn't lend itself to deadlifts. I have short arms, so I'm having to pull the weight up, you know. Yeah. So I was always, and I'm still known as as one of those overhead press guys. So I pretty much any overhead press I love, and deadlifts, but that's also followed by yoke. I love doing yoke. I'm relatively good at it. It is a soul crushing movement. But being able to put, 900, 1,000 pounds on your back and move it 50 to 100 feet in what most people would be able to just faster than somebody would normally walk with that kind of weight. It's fun.
Yeah, I think I wanted to talk about overhead press for a second, but I think that a lot of people, including myself, did not even understand or appreciate or acknowledge the athleticism required for strongman. Like it just seems like such a I don't know, maybe we see like the static lifts and we think, oh, they just need a bunch of size, but being able to move is obviously just as important. The overhead press though, so I feel like overhead press may be like the great equalizer, because you throw somebody under an overhead press and if their form is, you know, half an inch off forward or backwards, they're going to miss that lift. I mean, especially once they get into that zone, as you would call it, you know, it's the deep water training, like you need to have that movement perfected. So that's very interesting. I think that that's kind of unique to strongman. I would be, if I remember correctly, old powerlifting. I doubt they called it. I don't think they called it powerlifting then, but overhead press was involved in it. So I think that overhead press, it deserves kind of a renaissance. I think it needs to be coming back. So I'm glad to see that y'all appreciate it on the level that I do. All right. So the last question, it's a little bit more existential than our other questions have been, but how can, in your opinion, how can the strongman space, and you can speak into strongman, or perhaps I know you have a long history in the fitness industry, how can these industries or these spaces improve?
Well, the one thing that strongman in particular is a niche sport. The more we can standardize the sport and the more publicity we can give to the sport, the more the sport will keep growing, and there'll be more opportunities for people to, like in Europe, make a living off of doing the sport, right? They have a lot of the European people, a lot of the European competitors, that's their living. That's how they get paid. As far as the fitness industry goes, kind of along the lines of what you're doing is building the hub where it's not just, well, I know this person that could help you. It's the level of credentials of the person, what they specialize in, and then finding the right fit for the person's needs, because that's, you know, there have been times when I could potentially have been a perfectly acceptable trainer for somebody, but I knew I wasn't the right fit for that person. So I had no problem handing them off to somebody else, just because I knew that at some point we wouldn't gee and haw on how we went about changing their life, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's a huge, I'm glad that you spoke from the trainer's perspective. And I don't think that approach is very common at all, because the commercial gyms, you are a volume machine almost exclusively, and throwing somebody away, and I say throwing away, handing them off to somebody that, you're right, would be a better fit. That's something that I even had to come to terms with a while back, because you're right. I mean, you would have had some type of conflict at some point. They wouldn't have listened to you. Like, there's so much that goes into it. Such a person driven, like individual driven interaction, that of course you have to be able to be like, okay, I know somebody that's better for you. And exactly, that's what we're trying to do with Level Up, because I wanted to have a network of physical therapists, chiropractors, people that I know I could send to and send clients to. And that's really not the case. I mean, I know a handful of trainers, Roger Baker included, that I would send a client to, but it's really hit or miss. And I think that that's really kind of a big part of the issue within the fitness industry generally.
Yeah. Well, and the other aspect of it too is, you know, we are all human beings, and everybody has a different motivation, and the key to finding the right motivation, the right fit for everybody is, you know, your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you a trainer? Why are you a doctor? And why do you want to change your life when you come to see somebody like that? So is it because you've had a health scare, or you've got a wedding coming up, or, you know, you put on 50 pounds since you went to college and you want to change that. But there's got to be an underlying why, and making those whys mesh is going to be huge.
I don't think that a lot of fitness professionals even dig deep enough to discover those whys. And I think that it's really a shame, because those are the most important things, because you can have those external motivators, but they're going to burn out at some point. And you have to establish those values so you can go back and focus on them again. And I mean, I had my heart broken countless times. I would sit down with a training client, and they would tell me how their previous trainer they burned them this way, or they did this. And I was almost feel like I was having to apologize for trainers in general. So it's no surprise that you pointed that out. Lisa, did you have any ideas?
Having not been a personal trainer myself, but
Yep.
Have tried different things and being involved with stuff, it's it's nice if there is some sort of a hub like what you're going to be developing, a general awareness of the different opportunities out there in the fitness world. For me, it's been a good experience to try different things and to get to know other competitors and how things work, the mindset, what works, what doesn't work, different approaches. I think it's really helpful to have that knowledge and understanding of, what different people are doing and how they're approaching things.
Yeah, I'm sure that your branching out and trying different things has definitely contributed to your ability to continue improving over time. So that's awesome. I think a lot of times people get too hyper specialized. They focus on one thing. They identify I am a powerlifting person. I am a bodybuilding person, but they don't look at, what are the things that I could pull from these other modalities that could benefit my sport that I have chosen. And I think you're talking about your leg development from years of lifting heavy ass things with your legs. Like, you can't get that by a bunch of leg extensions. So there's like different things that we can pull from different modalities. So that's awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys. I very much appreciate your time. And I look forward to talking to you guys again someday. Maybe we'll see each other at the gym. Maybe I'll come over and get a lift in with you guys. I need like 6 months to prep though. So that's going to be my peaking day.
No. It's a come as you are. There is no, I have to get ready to come train with you. That doesn't work.
Absolutely. You know that. Yeah, I know. But yeah, it was good talking to you guys, and I'll see you later.
All right.
Thank you,
sir.
Appreciate it.